Imagine for a moment that reality isn't fixed, that it's actually fluid, shaped by those with the strongest conviction. This isn't fantasy, it's power in its purest form. The greatest leaders, influencers, and strategists throughout history haven't just participated in reality, they've created it. When someone walks into a room with absolute certainty, something strange happens. People instinctively follow. Their doubt fades against your conviction. This is what Machiavelli understood centuries ago that most still miss today. Perception doesn't just influence reality, it creates it. Look around you. The most successful people aren't necessarily the most talented or intelligent. They're the ones who've mastered the art of reality control. They establish frameworks where others play by their rules, often without even realizing it. I'll be honest, this knowledge changes everything. Once you see how malleable perception truly is, you can never unsee it. You'll recognize when others are trying to control your reality, and more importantly, you'll learn how to establish your own. What I'm about to share isn't taught in schools or conventional success manuals. It's the hidden architecture of influence that's been guarded by the few who understand its power. By the end of this video, you'll see interactions differently, recognize reality manipulation happening around you, and know exactly how to establish mental dominance in any situation that matters to you. This isn't about deception. It's about understanding how reality actually works and finally putting yourself in the driver's seat. Number 1. The conviction gap principle. Have you ever noticed how some people walk into a room and instantly command attention? It's not their clothes, their height, or even their voice. It's something far more powerful, something invisible yet impossible to ignore. What you're sensing is their absolute conviction in their own reality. While most people wait for permission to believe in themselves, these rare individuals operate differently. They've mastered what I call the conviction gap principle. Think about the last time you had a great idea but didn't speak up, or when you knew the answer but doubted yourself. In that moment, you were caught in the conviction gap, that space between knowing something and fully embodying it. Most people live their entire lives in this gap, operating at about 70% certainty, while constantly looking around for validation before they commit fully. But here's what changes everything. The human mind is naturally drawn to certainty, like moths to flame. When someone displays unwavering conviction, operating between 90 to 100% certainty, others instinctively align themselves with that reality. It's not manipulation, it's human nature. We're wired to follow those who seem to have figured things out. The most fascinating part. This works regardless of whether you're actually right. History's most influential figures weren't necessarily the most accurate. They were the most certain. While others hesitated, they declared. While others questioned, they affirmed. Let me show you how this works in practice. Next time you present an idea, eliminate qualifying language like "I think" or "maybe." Instead of saying, "I think this approach might work," simply state, "This approach works." Notice how differently people respond. The same idea, presented with absolute conviction, travels differently through space. This isn't about becoming arrogant. It's about eliminating the hesitation gap that most people never even recognize exists. When you speak, move, and decide as if you're already certain of the outcome, people respond to that certainty before they even process your words. What makes this principle so powerful is its universality. Whether you're in a boardroom, at a social gathering, or in a relationship, the person with the strongest reality always prevails. By deliberately occupying the space of complete conviction, even before you have complete information, you create a gravitational pull that makes others orbit your reality rather than questioning it. This is our first principle out of 5 for controlling reality, the conviction gap principle. Master the art of eliminating the hesitation most people display. Speak, move, and decide with 100% conviction, and watch as others begin to align with your version of reality simply because it feels more solid than their own. Number 2. Reality anchoring technique. Have you ever been absolutely certain about something only to find yourself suddenly doubting it after someone challenged you? Even when you know you're right, a skilled challenger can make the ground beneath your feet feel shaky. This happens because most people don't understand how reality is established in human interaction. The person who controls the framework controls the conversation and ultimately the outcome. Let me introduce you to the second principle of mental dominance, the reality anchoring technique. This is how master persuaders establish their version of reality so firmly that challenges bounce off like raindrops on glass. The secret isn't in defending your position, it's in making your position the foundation that everything else is measured against. Here's how it works. When most people face opposition, they instinctively become defensive, trying to justify their position. But this actually weakens your stance by implicitly acknowledging that your reality is up for debate. Master reality controllers do something completely different. They immediately establish 3 tangible reference points that frame their perspective as the baseline reality. Think of these reference points as planting flags in the ground. They're specific, concrete examples or facts that support your position. When you provide these quickly and confidently after being challenged, something fascinating happens in the mind of your listener. Instead of questioning your entire framework, they subconsciously begin measuring deviations from it. Let me give you a real example. If someone challenges your business strategy, don't defend it directly. Instead, say, 3 things make this the clear path forward. First, our data shows customer acquisition costs drop 40% with this approach. Second, our top competitors have already moved in this direction. Third, our team is specifically skilled in executing this exact strategy. Notice how these aren't opinions. They're anchors planted firmly in reality. What you've just done is created what psychologists call perceptual anchoring, where others subconsciously measure deviations from your established framework, rather than questioning the framework itself. The conversation now happens on your terms, within your reality. The most powerful aspect of reality anchoring is that it works silently. People rarely notice what's happening. They just feel increasingly aligned with your perspective as the conversation progresses. You're not battling for agreement. You're establishing the terrain on which the battle takes place. To master this technique, prepare your 3 anchors in advance for any important position you hold. Make them specific, tangible, and diverse. One should appeal to data, another to shared values, and the third to practical implementation. When delivered with the conviction we discussed earlier, these anchors become nearly impossible to uproot. This is our second principle out of 5 for controlling reality. The reality anchoring technique. Instead of defending your position when challenged, immediately establish 3 tangible reference points that frame your perspective as the baseline reality. Practice this, and you'll notice people arguing less with you and following your lead more often. Not because you've convinced them, but because you've redefined the reality in which the conversation takes place. Number 3, the invisible environment method. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt powerful or powerless without knowing why? Or noticed how conversations flow differently depending on where people are seated? What you're experiencing is one of the most overlooked aspects of reality control, the silent power of physical space. The environment around us shapes behavior in ways most people never consciously register. This brings us to our third principle of mental dominance, the invisible environment method. While others focus solely on what they say, masters of reality control understand that where and how things are said often matters more. The physical world around us silently dictates behavior, creating invisible forces that guide interactions toward predictable outcomes. Consider this. Research shows that people sitting at the head of a table speak 40% more than others and are interrupted 30% less often. This isn't coincidence. It's environment creating reality. The person who controls the environment controls the interaction, often without others even realizing it's happening. The method works through 4 specific environmental elements you can strategically arrange. First is positioning, controlling seating arrangements, standing positions, and physical proximities to create the power dynamic you desire. When you place yourself at focal points, higher elevations, or with your back to solid walls, you automatically command more authority. The second element is line of sight. We instinctively pay more attention to what we can see clearly and fully. By positioning key visual elements, including yourself, within the primary line of sight of others, you direct attention and, subsequently, the flow of reality. Notice how effective leaders always ensure they're visible to everyone when speaking. The third element is ambient conditions, temperature, lighting, sound, and even scent. These sensory factors silently influence mood, attention spans, and receptiveness to ideas. Slightly cooler rooms increase alertness, while warmer spaces promote agreement. Brighter lighting encourages analytical thinking, while softer lighting enhances creativity and openness. By controlling these elements, you predispose others to the mental state that best serves your objectives. The fourth element is physical barriers and pathways, objects that create separation or connection. Tables, chairs, doorways, even decorative items subtly dictate how people interact. When you want collaboration, remove barriers. When you need authority, create subtle separation. The physical flow of a space determines the psychological flow of interaction. What makes this method so powerful is its invisibility. While people guard against verbal persuasion, they rarely notice how the environment shapes their thinking. By strategically arranging these 4 elements, you create a physical reality that naturally leads others toward your desired outcome without resistance. This is our third principle out of 5 for controlling reality, the invisible environment method. Strategically arrange your environment to subtly enforce your preferred power dynamics. Controlling seating arrangements, line of sight, ambient conditions, and sensory stimuli that predispose others to accept your frame without conscious awareness of these influences. Master this method, and you'll find people mysteriously more receptive to your ideas, more likely to follow your lead, and less inclined to challenge your position, all while believing they're making completely independent decisions. Number 4. Controlled vulnerability positioning. Have you ever noticed how some people can admit weaknesses, yet somehow emerge looking stronger? Or how certain leaders can acknowledge mistakes and gain more trust, while others lose credibility for the same admission? The difference lies in understanding one of the most counterintuitive principles of reality control: strategic vulnerability. This brings us to our 4th principle of mental dominance: controlled vulnerability positioning. Most people believe that showing weakness undermines authority, but master reality controllers know that selective vulnerability actually strengthens it when deployed correctly. The principle works on a fascinating psychological paradox. When someone appears to hide nothing, we stop looking for what they might be concealing. Complete transparency creates an impression of absolute honesty, establishing you as the reality authority. But there's a critical distinction between random vulnerability and controlled vulnerability positioning. The key is selecting vulnerabilities that actually highlight your strengths when examined closely. For example, admitting, "I struggled with the financial aspects of this project because my focus has always been on innovation and design," reveals a weakness while simultaneously emphasizing your creative strengths. This creates what psychologists call a perception paradox that solidifies trust while maintaining dominance. Think of it like a magician showing you his empty hands. The apparent transparency makes you less likely to look for the trick happening elsewhere. By strategically revealing certain cards in your hand, you create the impression that you're showing your entire hand. Let me show you how this works in practice. In negotiations, revealing your reasoning process rather than just your position creates the impression of complete transparency. Saying, "I initially valued this at $10,000 because of X factor, but after considering Y and Z, I realized $12,000 is fair," seems to reveal your entire thinking process. This apparent transparency establishes you as the honest broker in the room, allowing your framework to become the shared reality. The most powerful application comes when handling opposition. When someone challenges you, acknowledge their point before redirecting. That's a valid concern about implementation costs. I had the same worry initially, which is why I spent extra time ensuring our timeline accounts for those variables. You've shown vulnerability while actually strengthening your position. This technique creates three powerful effects. First, it disarms critics by removing their ability to expose you. You've already exposed yourself. Second, it creates authenticity that makes others more likely to trust your perspective. Third, it establishes you as the authority on reality by demonstrating you see all sides clearly. To master this principle, identify vulnerabilities that form natural bridges to your strengths. Practice revealing processes rather than just outcomes. And always follow vulnerability with a demonstration of how you've already addressed or overcome the weakness you've acknowledged. This is our fourth principle out of 5 for controlling reality. Controlled vulnerability positioning. Strategically reveals specific weaknesses that create an impression of complete transparency, establishing you as the reality authority. The key is selecting vulnerabilities that actually highlight your strengths when examined closely, creating a perception paradox that solidifies trust while maintaining dominance. When you master this principle, you'll find people paradoxically more likely to follow your lead after you've shown them your weaknesses, not despite them, but because of them. Number 5, reality momentum shifting. Have you ever tried to change someone's strongly held belief through pure logic and facts? If so, you probably discovered what master persuaders have known for centuries. Direct confrontation almost always strengthens resistance. The harder you push, the harder people push back. This happens because most people approach influence all wrong. They try to overcome momentum rather than redirect it. This brings us to our 5th and final principle of mental dominance: reality momentum shifting. This principle is based on a simple but profound truth. It's easier to redirect existing energy than to generate new energy. Most people try to change others' minds through direct confrontation, creating friction and resistance. Masters of reality control do something entirely different. They identify the existing momentum in someone's worldview and redirect it toward their desired outcome. Think of it like martial arts for the mind. In Aikido, you never directly oppose your opponent's force. You blend with it and redirect it. The same principle applies to controlling reality. Instead of opposing someone's existing beliefs, you acknowledge their momentum and gently curve it toward your objective. Here's how it works in practice. First, identify what direction someone's thoughts are already moving. What do they already believe strongly? What values do they already hold? What goals are they already pursuing? This is their mental momentum, the energy already in motion. Next, find the point of connection between their momentum and your desired outcome. There's almost always a bridge, some way their existing beliefs or goals can lead naturally to what you want. This is your redirection point. Finally, present your idea not as a new direction, but as a natural extension or evolution of their existing path. Phrases like, in line with what you already believe about, or building on your commitment to, signal that you're not opposing their reality, but enhancing it. Let me give you a concrete example. If someone opposes your business proposal because they value careful planning, don't argue against their caution. Instead, say, your emphasis on careful planning is exactly why this approach makes sense. This proposal actually builds in 3 additional safeguards that traditional approaches miss. You've now transformed their momentum of caution from an obstacle into support for your position. What makes this principle so powerful is that it feels effortless to the other person. Since you're working with their existing momentum rather than against it, they experience the shift as their own natural conclusion rather than your persuasion. This eliminates psychological resistance that occurs when people feel their reality is being challenged. The most advanced application of reality momentum shifting occurs when you can connect your desired outcome to someone's identity. When people believe something is aligned with who they are, acceptance becomes almost automatic. As someone who values innovation, you'll appreciate how this approach. This is our 5th principle out of 5 for controlling reality. Reality momentum shifting. Instead of trying to change others' minds through direct confrontation, identify the existing momentum in someone's worldview and redirect it toward your desired outcome. This allows you to harness their own psychological energy rather than creating resistance, making your frame feel like their natural conclusion. Master this principle, and you'll find people mysteriously arriving at your preferred outcomes while believing they got there entirely on their own. The ultimate form of reality control. These 5 principles, the conviction gap, reality anchoring, the invisible environment method, controlled vulnerability positioning, and reality momentum shifting, form a complete system for mental dominance that has been used by history's most influential figures. Each principle amplifies the others, creating a framework where you truly do control reality. Remember, this knowledge carries responsibility. The goal isn't manipulation for personal gain, but rather understanding the true architecture of influence so you can navigate any situation effectively. When you control your reality with conviction, establish anchors that define the framework, strategically arrange your environment, position vulnerability to build trust, and redirect momentum instead of creating resistance. You become the author of your circumstances rather than merely responding to them. The greatest power isn't forcing others to see your reality. It's creating a reality so compelling that others naturally align with it. Now that you understand these principles, you'll begin noticing them everywhere. In leadership, in relationships, in every human interaction where influence occurs. The question is no longer whether reality can be controlled, but whether you'll be the one controlling it. The next video the algorithm chose for you isn't random. It's your next tactical upgrade. Click it now and continue your silent ascent.